What's in a name? For Shakespeare, who asked the question a few centuries ago, the answer was the sweetness of a rose. Today, the answer may be the future of the largest alliance in the world. Let me explain and show you what might be the most historically significant selfie in recent memory. Those are two people whose countries have been feuding for almost 30 years, the prime ministers of Greece and North Macedonia. And it is that name, North Macedonia, that is going to redefine NATO and reinforce Western efforts to counter Russia. Let's go to the map. Since Macedonia was formed in 1991, Greece has objected to its name because part of Greece is called Macedonia. So Greece blocked Macedonia's request to join NATO. But now Macedonia has agreed to change names, and the Greek parliament has become the first country to ratify North Macedonia's ascension to NATO, a move that U.S. officials believe will help combat malign Russian influence in a critical region. And so it is my privilege to welcome two foreign ministers to the NewsHour, Dimitrόf of North Macedonia and Georgios Katrougalos of Greece, for their first joint interview. Thank you so much to you both.
Thank you so much for having us.
Let's start with North Macedonia. It is smaller than Maryland. It has a population of about 2 million. Why should Americans care about this story, and why should Americans care about North Macedonia?
The first ever NATO operation in its history took place in our region back in '99. So these moves essentially extends the zone of stability in a region that needs more stability, and it makes us an ally that the US and other allies can rely upon. We also bring a bit of freshness to the alliance because we've been on the outside for a long time, and we know how cold it is on the outside. So I think we can bring that enthusiasm and try to spread it among the member states.
And remind people it's warmer on the inside.
It's warmer on the inside,
so to speak. We just heard an argument for the stability of the region of the Balkans. Expand that argument out a little bit. How does stability in this area add to stability all over Europe?
Well, first of all, to connect with your starting line about the rose, the War of Roses was not about roses. So the dispute about the name, it was also a dispute about identity, about the national sensitivities in a region which was always the powder keg of Europe. What we have tried with our neighbors to do is to diffuse the nationalism, the poison of nationalism, which is something quite different than patriotism. We love, both of us, our countries, but it is not necessary to hate the country of the other.
For your country, how important is NATO to the future prosperity of the people of North Macedonia?
Even though we are still not formally part of the alliance, we are already feeling that predictability essentially triggers economy. And last year we have recorded the highest amount of foreign direct investments in the amount of 624 million euros, which is an important amount for our size, for our economy, for our country. So we have, by being on the right side of history, I think managed to produce some predictability and a friendly future between our two countries.
You're both here for the NATO ministerial here in Washington. One of the elephants in the room that people are trying to avoid, but it's difficult to, is President Trump. He has questioned the viability of NATO in the past, questioned, frankly, the relevance of new countries to come into NATO. Is there a concern that President Trump personally, and therefore the U.S., is not committed to the future of NATO?
Well, there is a discussion now regarding EU-USA relations. We both want to keep this partnership alive and kicking. But in order to do that, there are some things that are necessary to any kind of relationship. Mutual respect, not unilateral movements. So we are going to do our part in Europe, I speak, and we're expecting our American friends to do the same.
Can you expand on that? What does that mean, that you expect your American friends to do the same kind of work?
As I said, mutual respect is in the tone of what we are saying, even if what we are saying is true and correct. Avoiding unilateral moves is not trying to impose something unilaterally when we could result in a meaningful consensus if we were speaking. I don't want to be more explicit, but I think I'm describing, and you can understand easily the content.
The speech of both houses of the Congress of Secretary General of NATO, Stoltenberg, had a very important line. He said, "It is good to have friends." And given that our times are times where the world is getting smaller and very interconnected, it is very difficult to face one of the big challenges of our times at a national level. So I argue that even the greatest country needs allies, needs friends, of course, on the basis of important principles. I think the issue of fair burden sharing is an important issue. It has been an issue that has been pushed by a sequence of several American presidents.
Since John F. Kennedy made the same statement, just with a different tone.
And this is an important message, and I think it resonates. European allies are picking up. We are very much committed, regardless of how small or big we are, to do our part, and not only to spend enough, which is this 2% threshold of our GDP on defense, but also make sure that what we spend this amount on actually is worthwhile for the collective security of the alliance.
Let's talk about Russia for a few minutes. I'll ask about the North Macedonia efforts that Russia did, and of course Greece has faced the same thing. You actually had to kick Russian officials out. Do you believe that this moment, the fact that you guys are here together, does present a bit of a united front, or at least a message to Russia's attempts to try and have influence in this part of the world?
We think that the biggest challenge for NATO, but especially for Europe, is how to reintegrate Russia into the regional system of European security. We have tried and we have succeeded to do that in the past with the Soviet Union, a much more aggressive and stronger player. And if this was possible before, it can happen again. What's a precondition? Respect of international law, avoiding any kind of aggression. So we are not maybe ready now to face Russia because with these characteristics, because clearly they are lacking. But this must be our target.
But just to put a point on that, I mean, Russia has not respected international law in regards to eastern Ukraine, Crimea, and you could argue Syria. And in your case, you know, you haven't explicitly blamed Russia. Do you believe that Russia was trying to manipulate the online space and influence the results of the referendum?
We're going to be part of an alliance where, at some point, to go back to George's point on the need to have a dialogue, to de-escalate the renewed tensions that started with Georgia and then Ukraine. But this bridge will have to be built on some important pillars where international law is very important. And I think we will help in our own way as the 30th member state in this regard.
I don't think we must have in mind to be as a basic, let's say, priority of us to be against anybody. We are not living in a Cold War environment. That means that it is not a bipolar world. That means that we do not have just one rival. We have asymmetric threats. What we must have always in mind is that we must have policies based on principles, protection of the openness of our societies, rule of law, human rights, and trying to integrate as many countries and as many political entities as we can.
George Katrougalos of Greece, Nikola Dimitrov of North Macedonia, two foreign ministers. Thank you to you both.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
A pleasure.